I walked through a forest, pleasant, peaceful, deep, and rich forest where beautiful, big, bright yellow butterflies were fluttering about. Music was playing. Someone on a guitar was playing and inviting me over to come and dance along. And then when I was ready, I scurried along into the forest, and that gave me insight into my own understanding of who I am and why it's so enjoyable to be me and desire to spend so much time alone, which gave me the sense of acceptance, um, completely deep and profound understanding of who I am to have that kind of insight into my emotional mind.
Okay, now, yeah, I'm going in, no time to play, yeah, I got a dream I wanna chase.
Welcome to Psychedelic Diaries. I am Ray Christian, and this episode is going to slap. We'll be discussing asking for forgiveness rather than permission, deep experience with death, and of course, experiences on high doses of psychedelics. Reverend Jacqui Ruiz, CEO of the Psilocybin Method, will be here for a deep dive and a soul search. Our special guest co-host Carlos Plazola is here for another round of the Eagle and the Condor. But as usual, let's start things off with a nugget and a noodle. In today's news nugget, the psilocybin spike. The wife of Canadian Senator Larry Campbell spiked his coffee for weeks. And no, she didn't slip him a Mickey. She put a microdose of magic mushrooms in his morning cup of joe, unbeknownst to the senator. The ethics, dubious. The results, delightful. The senator overcame a 20-year battle with depression and says he hasn't felt this good in years. And as for the noodle, something I've been noodling on of late, Oregon trailblazing. For this episode, I'm on location in Oregon, and it has me reminiscing on the classic 90s Oregon Trail computer game. The state is a current hotbed of public debate on psilocybin in advance of the magic mushroom legalization this January. And just like with software V1 rollouts, it probably won't be perfect, but it will be staggering progress, and perhaps a bellwether for the rest of the psychedelic world. The hottest debate seems to be access. A submission by the entheogenic practitioners' proposal would allow sacred use, including the allowance for religious organizations to produce and deliver magic mushrooms, and for community peers and volunteers to facilitate deep sessions. Whether that gets through remains to be seen. And I'm not a religious person, but at this pace, I might be finding Jesus in the very near future. It's tough to tell, but it feels like this state values access for all, not just the wealthy or those with a prescription. The goal is a program where the marginalized, the sick, and the healthy but dissatisfied will all be able to easily engage. Will it be a clunky wagon ride for future Oregonians? Or will there be a smooth path? Something to noodle on. Okay, speaking of decriminalization, our special guest co-host, the man who sparked the Oakland decriminalization, Carlos Plazola, is here again. Mr. Plazola, what's on your mind for today's Eagle and Condor?
Ray, it's a pleasure to be here again. And I hope that senator leads the charge wherever he is in decriminalizing and legalizing use of mushrooms as a beneficiary. So look forward to him stepping out for it. And kudos to his wife for taking a chance there. Glad it went the right way. Okay, I think it's going to be a clunky wagon ride, your Oregon reference. Hot off the press today, and I have yet to confirm this, but I just got a note here that the Psilocybin Advisory Board shot down the entheogenic practitioner's proposal set forth by John Dennis, a major blow to the movement. So now we find ourselves in a scenario that decriminalized nature actually warned folks about back in 2019, which was if we pass something in a closed loop system, a top-down model of control, meaning that setting up conditions where people can find exclusive entry into and benefit from, whether it be either personal pride gain or monetarily, that then the system fights against access. And so, interestingly, we now have a scenario in Oregon where it looks like access is going to be shortchanged to those most unable to afford access. I'm wondering what your take is. Perhaps there's a perspective here as the voluntary eagle in this scenario. I know you carry a lot of Condor in your heart. What's your view on this?
Well, I appreciate that take, and yes, if they're going to deny that, I think that's a botch. And yet, for me, criticizing Oregon for what they've done on this, it feels like criticizing a hot fudge sundae because they have decriminalized all drugs. That was a major feather in the cap. And then legalizing psilocybin as an initiative. And I think that, so my view is that if they do deny it, that's disappointing. But I think the reason they may or will probably be that they were hamstrung by the way the law was written. And I would say, you know, any effort spent criticizing Oregon should be spent criticizing the feds or criticizing states that have no interest in or no initiatives on psychedelics. Nebraska, uh, West Virginia, not to pick out states, but the states that aren't doing anything, those are the ones that deserve heat.
Right. So I think what you describe is the essence of the debate, and I want to lift it up. So the question then becomes: if we create a closed system model, which they did in 2019 through the ballot measure M109, can then a system of full accessibility, that is full decriminalization, does it help that emerge or does it hinder that? And our perspective has been from the beginning that unless we lead with decriminalization, creating a model of legalization will create beneficiaries and economic beneficiaries eventually. And what our perspective is that in a country like ours, that really where profit is king, people who benefit will form lobbying groups and advocate against abundance for personal gain, and we see that often. So I hope you're right, but I'm afraid that the evidence might not be pointing in that direction in this country's 200-year history of trying to build a capitalist system. What's your take?
That's fair, and it does seem like the jury's still out on cannabis. On like, will we ever get to just a fully decriminalized, legalized model? It seems like we've got a good trend with the states doing it. Eventually, we need the feds to do it too. But cannabis might be the fullback opening up the lane in the NFL, and opening up so that the halfback, the running back, psychedelics bust through. But I guess it just feels like it's still progress. And sometimes to win the war, you got to win a couple battles, even though the battle might be fucking ugly. And in this case, it is a little bit ugly. It's not perfect. But I'm curious to hear your take on what would you have done differently? So Oregon did this stuff. They decriminalized all drugs like Portugal, which was, I mean, incredible. They legalized it and it's going to be imperfect. But would you have said hold off on the legislation that they did do until we get the fully legalized approach?
Yeah, great question, actually. And just so your listeners and viewers understand, our approach is we advocate for the sovereign relationship with these sacred plant medicines and recognizing the indigenous ancestries that have used these plant medicines forever, including here in the U.S. In 2019, early 19, there was actually the ballot measure M109 contained language before it was M109. It contained language that would have decriminalized all entheogens for use, but they removed that as they started raising money. So it was money that actually drove the removal of the full decriminalization and created this sort of closed loop system. That was New Approach PAC when they got involved in supporting that. So that was unfortunate. I think it was around the same arguments that this will lead to the opening up of conversation, but we haven't seen that emerge yet in Oregon. We've seen a sort of, as of today, a shutting down of opportunity for access for people. But I do think this kind of conversation that you and I are having is critical to how this all emerges, because I think what we're doing here is going to help awaken a lot of minds in both directions, from the eagle to the condor and from the condor to the eagle.
Well put. Well, we'll have to do some more Eagles and Condors very soon. This was a fun one. We got to transition now to our special guest today. She is the CEO and founder of the Psilocybin Method and Embracing Your Light. She is a maverick leader in psychedelics that's helping people with deep exploration. Now, Reverend Jacqui Ruiz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with you both talking about something that is such a necessity in our world, beyond what we can even imagine and explain. There's such a need here. So thank you. Thank you both for what you do, and thank you for having me here.
Oh, what kind words. Thank you. And yes, it does get into this ineffable pretty quickly in this space. So let's
Hmm.
dive in, Jacqui. I'm excited to chat with you. And I really loved one of your quotes that I found online. You said, take a moment to review your life up to now and see what sense you can make of it all. Jacqui, why do you think it's so hard for so many people to avoid falling in that trap of sleepwalking through life, unhappy and dissatisfied?
That's such a deep and rich question. I think there's two parts to that really ring true from my experience. One is that many of us are taught to believe that life should be a suffering, that we're meant to just suffer, to suck it up and deal with what the cards that we're dealt with. And that's an unfortunate way of living. But there's a huge population in our world that believe that. The second is to do the work that brings us to an understanding of my life is my responsibility. Therefore, I get to be creative for how to live it. It takes a lot of work, and that work is not easy work to do. It's a deep dive into where has all of the suffering led me to? Where can I excavate the shit that didn't work and dig it up to deal with it in a way that allows me to see the perspective that I was living and shift the perspective into possibility, creativity, life, thriving, loving, living boldly. And that's hard to do, really hard to do.
Ah, it's a good way of putting it. It's so strange to think about psychedelics in this new paradigm because most of us grew up where it was like that was the party drug or the hippie drug, or you went to a rave and things got really weird, or you went to a party, and it's hard for us sometimes to have that cognitive dissonance of no, it can be two things at once. It can be this thing that for some people it is recreational, it can have fun, but it can also be this thing where it's work. And I love how you put that. This busting out of dissatisfaction and really looking into your own soul. It's hard, and I appreciate you saying that because it's not for the faint of heart. And speaking of making tough decisions, really impressed with what you're doing with Psilocybin Method, Jacqui. And I found you on Retreat Guru, and I could tell immediately that you're taking this approach of ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And I'm a big proponent of that. I love what you're doing. It's bringing people to this medicine now instead of waiting for outdated laws that were based on bald faced lies to change. And I'm curious, you had experience with embracing your light. As you decided to launch the Psilocybin Method, what was your thought process like?
Hmm. As a mortician in my past, I was a mortician for 15 years. I got to see death daily. It was very real. It wasn't the cliche, we're not promised tomorrow. It was very real. Death was present for me daily. And to see the number of people who were committing suicide or on the verge of that in relation to the communication that I was having with the families who were the survivors of the deceased, it became too real for me that there's so much suffering that is unnecessary. And we have here with psilocybin something that can change that for people. We have the ability to prevent suicides. We have the ability to prevent that deepening of depression and the intensity that goes along with it that people are suffering with. And why the F are we not delivering it to people in bulk in places where like we can see that something can be done differently to prevent future suicides, that deep intense depression, the suffering that happens within those walls. We have the ability and the power to do something about it, and so that's the place that I come from, why I do what I do now, in that I'm not waiting for permission. Yeah, it feels like for me it feels like I am a thief of a possibility for people if I don't offer what I offer.
Wow,
Uh,
Jacqui, that's incredible. this world needs healers, and particularly with unique perspectives, and that perspective of dealing with death daily for 15 years in a country that, and really in much of the world, that runs from death. And in fact, our cultures have often shut the door on death. It becomes this thing that you'll get to, but ignore it. And where many other cultures, ancient cultures, death was part of the ecosystem of life. Mexican culture, Dia de los Muertos, of course, is you live with death. You honor it once a year for a month, and recognize it, but it's always present, right? But dealing with death can be a pretty traumatic thing for particularly people in the West, but all over the world, certainly. So your perspective is very unique. And no amount of academic training can prepare someone to look deeply into one of our greatest fears, being death. How has this been useful for you in supporting people going through the personal healing work of plant medicine? Specifically, what lessons has it brought you that you can then share with people as they're going through some tough times?
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. Such an important one. We're all going to die. There's no changing that. We're all going to die. However, we can change our life drastically when we come to the acceptance that we're going to die, and that we can see that the mystery is in when. And so coming to a place of understanding where we can love ourselves, accept ourselves, believe in ourselves, create a sense of personal healing, personal understanding that there's a purpose for our life here and now, and someday that will come to an end. We create a different way of living. And that's the important part, is recognizing that life is happening for us now, and we just don't know. When will I die? I can die tomorrow. I can die in 15 seconds. I can die in 20 years. And if I'm making the most of my life now, then when that time comes, the people around who are left behind can have a sense of recognizing she loved life and she lived life, and we all have the power to do that for ourselves. And so we I mean, the problem is in when we don't recognize that death is coming for us. And so we're waiting, hoping, wishing, wanting, believing that maybe something else is available. The truth is that's not. Death will come, and we just don't know when. So why the heck wait for a second more?
I love that you mentioned purpose and finding your purpose and your meaning in life. I had reached this state after my mother's death of cosmic nihilism, right? There's no purpose to life. It's all just a bunch of bullshit. And it was really my healing path with plant medicines that has now been this profoundly wonderful life experience. But the beginning of my journey was really making the choice that I wanted purpose in my life, that to have purpose is a meaningful life. And then it was about, okay, well, what is my purpose? So thank you for that. You also do work in two parts of the world that are so drastically different. You do work in the United States, which is very much about scientific reductionism and getting down to the atoms. And we have many benefits that come from that, including this computer we're talking through. But you also do work in a part of the world that still sees all of the ecosystem of reality. Everything is interconnected. That must really be a trip. How do you? What is that like to do healing work in there?
It's a blessing. It's a joy. It's a privilege and an honor to work in the different worlds. Very diverse, and at the same time, very much the same. As humans, we all desire to be seen, to feel heard, and to have a sense of belonging or connectedness. And so that across the board is the same everywhere, no matter where I'm at. The differences are that in, let's say, Costa Rica, for example, life is simple. Life is, there is very primitive, very, the basic needs. That's about the extent of it. I mean, for the most part, simple, basic living offers a sense of confidence that isn't the same in the Western world, which is interesting because more is offered. There are more. Um, the belief is that there are more freedoms and there's more access in, let's say, the United States than Costa Rica. But there's a sense of confidence in having your basic needs met, that I will figure it out. I will find a way, or I'll create another option for myself that feels just like a reassurance to return to the basic simple living of life. In order to have that sense of confidence is an incredibly empowering place to live from. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. I don't need all these extras. I don't need all these things and these supportive technologies, if you will, to make things happen for me. I'll figure it out, and it's a beautiful way to live. And another difference that I see is that in a more primitive, indigenous type of living, there's a sense of unity that gets lost in the hustle and bustle and the demand for things. And when I say things, I'm talking about material things. That the difference in the United States is that most people are thriving to have more things. And in, say, Costa Rica, most people are thriving to have more connections. And there's a beauty in that. Where there's a need in Costa Rica, the need is met. There's no questions asked. The community unites and provides a need. I'll give you an example. I was driving on the road there, and the roads are very they're not well lit, they're not well paved, 2-lane highways everywhere and lots of windy roads. And a semi truck drove by, drove me off the road. My car fell into a ditch. Quite frightening. And every single car behind stopped, got out of the car, lifted the car out of the ditch, asked if we were okay, and carried on. And it was that quick, simple, and easy. No one took out their phone. No one recorded it. I don't know if it was posted anywhere on social media. It doesn't feel like it was. It was, there is a need. Let's fill this need and carry on with our lives. And that's really very much how the world is living in Costa Rica, how my world is in Costa Rica. It's really beautiful and feels united.
That is beautiful, and something so profound about getting back to basics, getting your hand in the soil, reconnecting with the earth, planting something, reconnecting with community, something that I think really is a source of a lot of loneliness and depression and even suicides here in our Western world that has so much to offer, but we've really lost a sense of that deep connection.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. That was
You're
beautiful.
welcome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, what you said was really profound. This idea of simple living offering confidence, and it kind of reminded me of like this idea of ignorance is bliss. Sometimes, like maybe it's good that I don't see what my neighbors are doing on their vacation every time. Like I don't need that FOMO in my life. That's not helpful. It seems like teens are seeing that now. Maybe in some of these communities like Central America, they're living that, and it may be that it's an objectively more pleasant way to live. And speaking of Costa Rica, Jacqui, I've been down there, a couple times, and I never knew how much I would miss street signs. It was when I was down there, because man, you got to figure some things out and kind of pull your Magellan skills a little bit. Quick question before we dive into the ineffable, the final deep dive question, Jacqui. You are in Monteverde, I think, or you spend a lot of time there in the cloud forest, one of my favorite places in the world. For someone visiting, what's one place in Monteverde they got to go see?
Oh gosh, there's so many. However, one place that feels really magical is it's a ficus tree that has rooted itself in a way that has created a bridge out of it. It's incredibly beautiful, mind blowing that a tree can create such a dynamic access. It's very much like oh gosh, what's the avatar type trees, but a real, right in front of your face, magical place to be. There's actually a table that has been created there just slightly above the trail where I like to have some of my work meetings at. It's designed as an office type table deep in the woods, and yeah, one of the most beautiful trees I've ever seen in my life there in Monteverde.
A ficus tree bridge. That
Mm-hmm.
sounds cool. I'll have to check that
Mm-hmm.
out, and I appreciate
I'll
that
share some
avatar
pictures with
reference.
you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, please do. Okay, Jacqui. So, if you don't mind taking a stab at the ineffable, I'll share a very recent experience I had, and I'll kick it to you. And curious to hear your thoughts on a transcendent or mystical experience. I had one recently. It was on psilocybin, and actually I mixed it with a little bit of MDMA, and it felt like, Jacqui, that I experienced God or source using a single thought to create or transition from this quantum infinite into a very specific abstracted moment in history that it was just made up out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden the details just started filling in with conscious attention where God or source started pointing attention. And I'm still grappling with the concept, and it really moved me. And I'm curious for you, what is a mystical experience that still resonates with you?
I have battled in the past, understanding myself in the way that I operate and socialize in the world. I enjoy my alone time. I spend a lot of time alone. It's a really peaceful place for me. However, in the world that we've been brought up in many ways, I was led to believe that something must be wrong for me to desire so much alone time. And so socializing became something that felt like a need and a must for me. And so I was constantly challenged with, why do I want to spend so much time alone when we should be socializing and connecting? And I can see the need for both. My mystical experience was having the opportunity to see what it was like to be inside of my emotional state. What an incredible experience. I got to journey through what it's like to be in my emotional mind. And I walked through a forest, pleasant, peaceful, deep, and rich forest where beautiful, big, bright yellow butterflies were fluttering about. Music was playing. Someone on a guitar was playing and inviting me over to come and dance along. And then when I was ready, I scurried along into the forest where, again, deep, peaceful, restful enjoyment place was. And that gave me insight into my own understanding of who I am and why it's so enjoyable to be me and desire to spend so much time alone, which gave me the sense of acceptance. I mean, I'm perfectly fine the way that I am, wanting to spend so much time alone and knowing that when I desire, they're the beautiful social butterfly opportunities for me to go and dance with the guitar playing in the distance. So, completely deep and profound understanding of who I am to have that kind of insight into my emotional mind.
Oh, wow. Jacqui, that is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That really resonates with me. I've wrestled with that too because I've found deep enjoyment with aloneness and realizing aloneness is different from loneliness. Aloneness is just an objective thing. Loneliness is adding a layer of stories on it, and there can be just so much beauty in this infinite mind of ours and our own journeying. And sometimes it's nice to just stare off in the distance, and that's the thing. And, that's what a fun deep dive. Thank you for that story, Jacqui. We got to transition now to the speed round soul search. Okay, Jacqui, question number one. What is a current challenge for you?
The current challenge for me is that I'm in many places. I move around a lot. I'm between the States and Costa Rica. I'm currently in Guatemala. And doing so much moving has created for me less time to build a community in one place. And so that feels, it's starting to feel challenging now.
Okay, Jacqui, question number two.
Okay.
been a long week. It's a Friday night and you want to unwind. What is your ideal mix of mind-altering substances on a Friday night?
Psilocybin. Yep. That's
I
psilocybin
feel
is
like,
it for me. Yes. hmm Just wakes me up. It builds me up. It resets joy and inner peace in such a way that I haven't found another option.
oh, I love that. Okay, Jacqui, question number 3.
Okay.
As we talked about, you are very experienced with death. So I'll put the impossible question to you. What do you think happens when we die?
I have no effing clue. I wish I knew. I think I know what happens to the living when someone dies. It causes reflection, connection. It causes a reset to the understanding of what is important to us. What happens to me when I die? I have no idea. I wish I had a little more insight, but I also, at the same time, feel quite pleased that I don't know. And I'm open to just what will be, will be.
Beautiful. Love that answer.
Okay, Jacqui, 4th and final question. Who is a current role model of yours?
Uh, I would say a Lua Arthur, who is a death doula and a really dear friend of mine. She's actually coming to visit me in Costa Rica this week. And again, with the understanding of death in our world, she is a force of someone who is really spreading the word and opening up for the understanding that death is very real, and there's a way in which we can find some grace in acceptance of our death. And she's created such a movement around death that is so beautiful, and it's changing the way that we view life and death in such a profound way.
Oh, that's cool. Bet that would warm her heart to hear that. Okay, Jacqui, where can the viewers and the listeners find you?
They can find me online at www.embracingyourlight.life, and it's LIGHT.LIFE. They can find me on Instagram at Embracing Your Light. They can find me on LinkedIn and on Retreat Guru and Psychable.com.
Okay, be sure to check out the Psilocybin Method, and we'll get those links in the description. Jacqui, you were fantastic. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you both so much. What a joy to be here and to talk about something so near and dear to my heart, something so meaningful and so necessary in our world. So thank you both. I appreciate you so much.
Great to meet you, Jacqui.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, next week, Jesse Gould, founder of Heroic Hearts, will be joining the show. Go support Carlos and the decriminalization movement at decriminalizenature.org. Come join me and other solo explorers at the Psilocybin Soiree, promo code Mushroom22. Hey, Carlos, any parting thoughts? Any Condor parting thoughts from you?
Yeah, I just want to lift up this was a really beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed what Jacqui brought today. The beauty of life is that there's this great mystery at the end of it. And the indigenous people of the world in many different places have a term for it, the great mystery. We're really not supposed to know. And perhaps when we do figure it out, we wake up from this beautiful dream we're having. And so perhaps the journey is really about just becoming comfortable with the unknown, learning how to detach, how to let go, and how to just live and be and experience. And death is the great challenge for us. So really enjoyed this, and thanks, Jacqui, for being here. Thanks, Ray, for bringing this forward to the viewers and the audience.
Becoming uncomfortable with the unknown. Beautifully put. Nice final thought. Okay, thank you for watching this episode of Psychedelic Diaries. For Reverend Jacqui Ruiz and Carlos Plazola, I am Ray Christian. See you next time.
Okay, now, yeah, I'm going in, no time to play, yeah, I got a dream I wanna chase, so stack the money in the bay, I got something I gotta say,